James King of GIG here with us today. How's it going, James?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, very good. I can't complain at all. Actually, it's a nice afternoon here in Malta. The weather is getting better and better, and things are heading towards autumn. So I definitely can't complain. This is what I like. James, we just spoke before we started the podcast here. Really interesting discussion on events that we have talked about before on this podcast as well. So the question is, like a company like GIG, traditionally you have done a lot of your sales and business through the events in general, and it's this kind of like legacy handshake. You meet face to face, you do this big deal, and obviously that was all taken away in 2020. So I want to ask you just as a starting point, like how have you guys been doing business this year? And when you now compare, when you look at events going forward, what's your thoughts going into 2021? Like, will you continue to do events? Will you not?
Yeah, I mean, whether we will or won't, to some extent, is out of our hands. It kind of depends how quickly, I guess, the pandemic becomes more of a workable norm. This year, like you say, has been incredibly interesting. We had a good start with ICE and generated, a strong number of opportunities. It was a really good show for us. We had a lot of new product to talk about. We had quite a few gigsters, not just from sales, but product heads from throughout the business. And then the pandemic hit the following month, which left a big question mark over, as you sort of touched on, how through the rest of the year we kind of look to continue to generate new business leads, as historically, and even for this year, we sort of planned to do quite a bit of that through event exposure and sort of physical presence at them. So, I mean, our initial pivot was to, at least from a sales team's point of view, was to get a bit old school and go through channels like, LinkedIn, directories, different media companies that had listings of the type of person that we wanted to talk to start working with, and get incredibly sort of proactive via email and on the phone, which actually ended up working, or has been working, quite well for us. There was the introduction, I think, a couple of months into the pandemic, of virtual events, which a really interesting piece. I think they certainly don't mitigate the sort of physical event and what the physical event used to deliver. We, initially, I think, took a bit of advertising at the first couple of virtual events. We had the whole team, virtually turn up to look to meet people. I think to one extent, it was nice because there had been a couple of months of limited interaction with the rest of the industry, and we're such a sociable industry, again reflected through the number of events that we have, and we all go out, meet each other, network, do business, but sort of enjoy each other's company. So it was quite fun to kind of go on and have a list of your old friends or acquaintances that you could say hi to, but it's certainly, I don't think, delivered what the old ones or what the physical events did in terms of helping to generate new business and meet with potential new leads. What I did like about them, though, was the content delivery piece. And I think that's where, for me, the value in the virtual events is getting some really good speakers. Like, I think one of the first ones we went to was what I believe it was the SBC one. And I just remember, initially going into it, going, "Wow, that is an incredible lineup." There's some really strong topics that I want to listen to, and from that, then putting my sort of marketing hat on, or sales hat on, how do we best sort of find the interaction points with potential business. I see it as a result of that being kind of the thought leadership piece, getting top of mind. and actually using the virtual events or approaching the virtual events to support, I think, a different part of the opportunity pipeline. I think events previously had been a driver at the very early stage, as said, the kind of new business piece, lead generation for me. And thus far, I think obviously there's still a way to go with virtual events. They're still in their infancy to an extent, and I'm sure we'll continue to get better. But at the minute, I see them as a sort of supporting role in the process, as opposed to something delivering new into it.
Yeah. This is obviously something we are thinking about day in, day out in our organization, how to kind of create value and how to truly create engaging like digital events for the iGaming industry. And I think you're touching on something quite important, is that the networking aspect of these events. Sometimes it's easy to get like snowed in as an organizer, and you do the same thing that you always done. You've done the conferences in person, and therefore you're gonna do the same thing in a digital environment. We're gonna have a networking chat. You can connect to people on this platform. You can create new leads and things like that. But completely disregarding the fact that outside of this platform, LinkedIn, for example, already exists. And why would people connect with each other in this platform where they can as easily connect through LinkedIn? So I think that's the question. If you want to do networking online, you have to ask yourself, like, what are you doing 10 times better than LinkedIn is doing? And right now, there is no answer to that question on the networking side. But on the content side, on the other hand, if you think about it, before March, James, like really good content was only available for people who could afford to pay that extra VIP ticket price at ICE, for example, that you were involved in. If you want to see content, you have to pay for the €1,000 ticket at Icebox, for example. Then you had access to some content. But all of a sudden, you've had this like intellectual renaissance in the gaming industry, where you have content happening all the time. Just like you and me have right now. I mean, we're sitting in different countries doing this discussion, and you never saw that before. You know what I mean? These discussions only happen at conferences for VIP people, basically. I think that's a beautiful thing that has come out of this.
Yeah, I think so. But the other bit to remember is from like your position, from one of the organisers' points of view, you have easier access to good speakers now. Having a physical event, you're required to potentially fly that person in, potentially pay for them, for their time, pay for hotel, food and beverage, all of this. Whereas actually, if you've got a virtual event, you have a far wider net of people you could potentially approach and just ask for 30 minutes of their time or 40 minutes of their time, where they can take that call, sat at home, boxers, bottom half, shirt and tie, top half. I think that's why we're probably.
Are you wearing pants now, James?
Pants and trousers today.
Oh,
yeah, it's quite a big day for me. I think the first time a shirt's been ironed in a while, but
okay, good.
So yeah, I think we are seeing and will see a kind of growth in the quality of content and sort of the quality of the people delivering that content. And I think if I was to highlight a point that excites me about the virtual event, it would be that. But as I said, I think to support companies in their sales process, to help companies drive new leads, like you say, you've got stuff like LinkedIn, which ultimately you're going to find very hard to compete with because of the size of business like LinkedIn and its Microsoft ownership. So I think you have to really assess where you can add value in different parts of the I guess sales process where they can't, and probably, and in fact definitely a big part of that comes, I think, from looking into the data that you've got and matching up that data with what people are looking for and trying to get quite granular in that. Because again, we're not all turning up to a physical event. You don't need it to be busy, you just need it to be right. And by that I mean, like, when I've been to an event with different hats on, there's only so many people I can meet. I would never be able to meet the, multiple of thousands, 30,000 or whatever that attend somewhere like ICE. But if I'm able to have, I don't know, 20, 30, whatever the number may be, but it's certainly not sort of the total of an event, then that's a really good show.
Mm.
And what's quite, again, for me, that I would like to think is exciting if someone can get it right. And I don't think anyone's quite there yet. But if you are able to sort of connect with or deliver to, the buyer, a gig, for example, or, whoever else it is you're working with, or whichever part of the industry it is, if you're able to kind of deliver the people, the exact type of person that we want to speak to, then that is a really powerful proposition, and actually a really nice one, because, you're not spending a third, 2/3 of the event having to mitigate a lot of time wasters, for example, coming up to your stand, wanting freebies, and nonetheless, you speak to everyone. You can't ever judge a book by its cover. When someone approaches you, you never know who they're working for, what product they're in, etc. So you do take the time to speak to everyone. Whereas, obviously, if in the kind of new digital age, in a conference and event scenario, I think you can look to get a more targeted delivery of visitor to your sponsors, to your partners.
Yeah,
And that would be fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. So the event shouldn't be for the masses, so to say. It should have a very specific target group, whether that being a demographic like a country, or whether it being a part of the sector like payments, or a seniority level or things like that. That's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Most companies have a target type that they are looking to work with. Like I say, whether that's based on geo, on a vertical, and whichever part of our industry they sit in. We don't want to meet every single person within the industry, because there's only so much business each company can do each year. And a great thing with online is that you, in theory, should be able to be far more targeted.
Yeah, true. I think, I mean, now when we look into 2021, we have already a crazy busy agenda that is scheduled. If you go on iGaming you'll already see a bunch of events that are scheduled, and I guess it will be interesting, because in a best case scenario, these events will first of all be permitted to be organized. Second of all, there's good enough flight connections to these locations, and third of all, organizations will actually allow their employees to travel in the first place. There's a lot of components that needs to work out. But even if all of those components are there, then the question is, then, like a company like GIG, you are looking at 2020. You have minimized the expenses towards events, and you still hit your target. So then the question is, like, why invest in these events?
Yeah, I think that would be a question not just faced or asked at Gig, but by anyone. I think that is able and has been able to navigate what has been like a terrible time. Obviously, not just for gaming. The global impact is and will continue to be horrible. But for any company, if we're speaking specifically about our sector, that is able to navigate it, do new business, sign new contracts, take new clients live, there will be a question mark when budgeting for 2021 of, what's the value proposition of spending or putting aside hundreds of thousands, for some a lot more, for some a lot less, in physical events, when we are there or thereabouts achieving what we had set to achieve, having really not had them this year. And it is certainly something we're looking at, I think, definitely for 2021, because the uncertainty is still there. Will there be any events allowed in Q1, Q2? If we're lucky, maybe Q3. I think even once they are allowed, the other question is, what will the appetite be of the audience, of the visitor? Even if there were no more or no longer restrictions on travel, countries had no more restrictions, does a visitor feel comfortable in still what is quite a close, time to this outbreak going global, to then travel? People are very nervous about getting on the train, going to an airport. How would they feel about turning up to a multiple 1,000-person event in a reasonably sort of small enclosed space? I'm not sure many will, perhaps. I think there was a survey done on one of the social groups within our industry a couple of months back saying, if we do this event, basically who will commit to coming? Will you A, say yes, definitely going to come, B, don't want to travel, with everything that's going on, even if allowed, but don't want to go, C, don't know. And something like 63% were up at the we're not coming. So, to shift mentality of that audience so quickly by next year, I think is unlikely, in my opinion. And I think obviously the kind of appetite for it will be a lot less. There's a lot of outside factors. If there is a vaccine or whatever, then perhaps change people's viewpoint. But I think to the initial point you said, if everyone does survive, does do okay this year, or those that do survive or do okay, they will have to ask the question or answer the question when they're putting together a P&L of, what added value are we now going to get by committing further sort of marketing dollars to the event piece. And so as organizers, I think you have to think about how you can support your buyers in that argument, and sort of step back and take a view of what has happened, what is continuing to happen, and say, right, where can we plug in to their sort of plans for next year, and how do we support them, knowing that perhaps they don't need a physical event. I think you have to think a bit more holistically of what you can sort of offer to someone, and not just go for the, I guess, slightly more old school view of it's just event.
Yeah. And also these legacy events that always have been happening year after year, where people go because, it's the legacy thing. You go every year, and they've always been there. They've always been good. That's what people are doing. If you don't go, you're seen as a company who maybe are not doing that well anymore. And that, like, all these legacy reasons why to attend an exhibit at an event goes completely out of the window now. And when the events eventually restart, I think that the organizations will, like you're saying, they won't be looking at these like legacy reasons anymore. They will be looking at what specific events will fill their specific need, in that sense that, yes, is there a particular emerging market? Okay, yes, we are entering that market. We should definitely attend this regional event. Or it could be that it's important for you to have your C-levels networking amongst other C-levels or things like that to create and generate business. And maybe that's instead of going to an event which has 30,000 people, it will be, a couple of hundred instead. But it's the exactly right people. It's cheaper to attend, cheaper to go, cheaper to sponsor, and whatever.
And people make decisions based on geography of their business as well. Like, an event in Malta will still likely attract those living and working within our industry in Malta. But it's, the reliance on masses traveling from outside of wherever it is you're hosting the event to attend. And at some points, the sales piece being on it as a location, I think that is perhaps going to be a tougher one to push next year.
And something this ties into in general then is our our topic of today, which is completely different. Well, it's not completely different, but it's
it all interlinks, to be fair.
Yeah. Which is instead of events, now we're talking land-based casinos instead then, versus online casinos, as opposed to land-based events versus online events. And So the same question and the same kind of argument can be made on that side as well. That like now, as we've been in COVID for what are we, like 7 months in since lockdown restrictions started, and particularly casinos have been affected, land-based casinos, and so forth. And so the question is now, like, as we move forward into this future, and gamblers and players are getting more and more kind of used to the idea to play online instead. The question is then the same thing here. What will land-based casinos, how will that turn out as we move forward? How do you see that, James, that side of things?
I'd say it slightly different to kind of the previous debate, in all honesty, and when we think about the title chosen for this podcast, I definitely don't think COVID is the death of land-based in any shape or form. I think land-based will continue to do well. I think what it's done is actually drive and further highlight the need for land-based to have a more omni-channel, offering, and the need for that digital support to what they have in the retail, in the sort of physical side of it. As we've seen in the properties that have had to close, obviously those without any sort of online version of their retail, of their land-based, they've had really no income whatsoever during the period of which they've been closed. Whereas those with an online offering have perhaps not mitigated the entirety of what they would have been sort of achieving having both open, but they've still seen revenues. They still managed, or are managing, to retain players. I mean, that's kind of, another worry, is that having closed your property, you have a lot of loyal players that are used to frequenting it. Where have they been the last 6 months? Perhaps looking for the next best thing. So I think, the shift in mentality is probably one more so towards land-based operators wanting to sort of speed up the process of moving online.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, there's been a lot of movement lately. I don't know if you saw yesterday, actually, James, the William Hill were the Caesars Entertainment are putting a bid, or potentially putting a bid, on William Hill to purchase their shares, the rest of their shares. And so, can we speculate a little bit on that? Why do you think they are making this move? Is that to secure themselves for the future in case that this will go on longer than they should, or is there other reasons perhaps as well? I mean, the US in general is opening up, so.
Yeah, I think they're probably looking forward, as well as you say, that the US is starting to pick up pace on its state by state kind of regulating piece. It's not just the US. I think another sort of impactor of COVID that we're seeing in Europe as well is that some countries are starting to push or speed up the allowance of local licensed operators going online. From a government point of view, you've got to remember they've all had a big hit on tax. So in countries where they weren't allowing online, but they have a large land-based presence, all of those land-based operations would have been paying some form of tax within their given jurisdiction or given country. There's been nothing from that for the government for 6 months. These are all governments as well that are probably supporting jobs within their country, so they've just been giving out, having nothing back. And I think from perhaps a longer term benefit of gaming, because again, the short term impact is very horrible for the land base, but long term benefit is they might be allowed now to kind of take on a license for online. So with that in mind, as a motivator globally, I think you can start looking at what Caesars are potentially trying to do with their sort of US piece in the takeover of Will Hill.
Do you think that we'll see like more M&As of that scale with large land-based organizations taking over online operators?
Yes, I mean we've seen more and more M&A over the last kind of decade. Anyway, we've seen it within verticals. Content providers buying out other content providers. There's been some incredibly sizable M&A activity. So, yeah, I think the land base will look at multiple routes to market or to digitalize. Part would be dependent on their exposure and sort of number of properties. For example, Caesars is an incredibly big group, so that could be a motivator in at least the speculated or rumored move that they're kind of putting forward.
Yeah, because we haven't. We've seen a lot of M&A within the online industry, but we haven't seen, as far as I can think on the top of my head, we haven't seen land-based operators acquiring online operators in the past. This would be kind of a first.
Again, I think COVID's probably sped up the shift in mentality that had slowly been moving that way. We've seen obviously over the years the increased market share of global gaming revenues from interactive. Still it's nowhere near the percentage that's taken in the land base, but it has been growing. This year will be a slightly exceptional year in terms of the results, but nonetheless I think it's just all part of speeding up a process that was probably in motion anyway.
Yeah, it's inevitable, right? I think at the moment in Europe the online part of the market is like 24% of the total market at the moment in 2019. It'll be really interesting to see what's going to happen in what the result will be in 2020. Like what type of market share do you think online will have this year?
I mean, Europe's always been slightly more than other areas. When you compare it to North America, to Asia, kind of even LATAM, like Europe seems to have been slightly more ahead of the game and advanced in their move into digital. But I think it will obviously go quite a few percent above the norm this year, or above the norm that was tracking. I think it would probably return slightly next year.
Yeah. Yeah, because we've seen, I mean, in Europe, Europe stands for half of the total global online gaming market, right? So what do you attribute that to? Is that
market.
Sorry?
Interactive global market is 50%, right, in Europe?
Yeah. In the global online gambling market share is like 50%. But what do you attribute that? Is that tech fluency that we have in Europe, or is there any other reason?
I think tech fluency. I think perhaps other countries have a longer history in land-based as well. Again, when you look at the land-based scene throughout the US and also in Asia and places like Macau, I think sort of there's slightly wider reaching history of it. I guess part of it is on government. There's perhaps a more liberal approach to things like licensing in parts of Europe than there can be in other countries.
I guess payments would be another.
The payment piece.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot is payments, things as you say, like accessibility to the different parts of the value chain of taking it on. Yeah,
that's true. So then the question is still, so the topic of today is COVID-19 the death of land-based casinos? Right? It's a hyperbolic topic, but still it has some relevancy because I'm Swedish, right? And in Sweden we have the state-owned casinos. So there's traditionally been 4 casinos in Sweden: Malmö, Gothenburg, Stockholm, and Sundsvall. And recently the first ever land-based casino in Sweden, which was launched in Sundsvall in the north of Sweden. Svenska Spel, who operated it, actually closed it down. Now they are not going to open it up after COVID is over, and this has been a result of kind of like a long-term steady decline in that casino, and COVID was like the death adder to it. So so the question is still relevant, I think. Do you think you'll see more bankruptcies?
Yeah, perhaps in smaller operations that were already in decline, as you said with this one. I think potentially on the high street where you've got things like your betting shops. I think it's probably speeding up a kind of decline for those type of venues, because like with sports, whether you place a bet kind of online or offline, it's almost by the effort, in fact, of showing up to a venue is quite nicely mitigated by being online. And actually, well, from my limited sort of experience going into sports betting shops in the UK, they're not perhaps always the most welcoming of environments. And then when you look at what the online offering is for with a lot of the sports betting operators, it's a lot for me at least. It's a lot more of a fun experience. So that is like one part of it. But then I think when you talk about our sort of proper land-based casinos globally, I think you'll find plenty of players and visitors who enjoy making their night out as part of the experience with the casino, that want to enjoy the restaurants, the bars, the parties. Some people that might even want a more tactile experience, where they can actually spin the reels of a slot machine, mingle with people, have a sort of real-time interaction with the dealer. So and an atmosphere which, however much one can try, will never be replicated in your home. There's also the one as well, like if you're for some, they don't want to be at home sat playing slot machines on their computer, perhaps with the kids around, or it's not an environment where they enjoy playing.
Yeah, you'll have that segment, obviously, that they go to the casino for the social aspect of it. It's a night out. I mean, within a casino, you have people who are there for a multitude of different reasons. Some people are just there to gamble. They don't care if they do it at home or at the casino, but because they've always done it, they continue to do it, I would think. And some people do it because they prefer the games that they see in the casino. They are more interactive, or you get to throw the dice, for example, or this type of.
Like you're with friends on the night out, and maybe you go for dinner, have some drinks.
Yeah. And then
occasionally you think, hey, let's jump into the casino, play on a couple of tables. It's a sort of fun ending to your evening. You're not going to finish your drinks and go, hey, should we go back to mine, sit around the laptop and get on one of the online operations, start playing there.
Yeah, to be honest with you, that's what we used to do a couple of years ago. When I was younger, we used to throw pre-parties at my home, and then we would put on the predictor. We would put on auto spin function of one of the games, and then we put in money. Everyone puts like €20, and whatever is left by the end of the pre-party, that's what we would use at the bar, for example. that was our way of doing online gambling socially, anyway. You know what I mean? But you'll have like visionaries like Todd Hasalter of Evolution Gaming, CPO. He has a very radical stance, but he comes from the land-based environment in Vegas, and he is set in his belief that that there is no reason why you wouldn't play games online in the future to land-based casinos. And his argument is that the environments that they can create with Evolution Gaming, like Crazy Time, for example, that they created now, and the other games that they are doing in the future, are so superior to the experience that you get in a casino, that he thinks that eventually the whole segment will move to online, because the games are just so much better, and even on a social level, they'll work on that to create the games even more social and so forth. And then you're just left with this segment who are going to the casino because they want to party, right?
Then I think.
And then the question is that segment big enough?
Yeah, I mean, they do, Evolution, create some incredible games, and getting as close to reflective of the experience as one can be. But again, you'll probably have to look at it on a market level, right? You know, we speak as Europeans sat in Europe, and as we've seen by the kind of size of segment of interactive in Europe versus rest of world, I think we probably take a slightly different viewpoint or stance on it. And I think, you know, the same conversation with two people sat in the US or somewhere in LATAM or somewhere in Asia would probably be very different. You know, and on a global level of kind of gross win, we're only making up as Europe, what, 22, 23% or something?
Yeah, 24.
Yeah. So, you know, perhaps there is a kind of steady decline in the land-based piece here in Europe, but I think that probably won't be reflective of, you know, the remaining 76%.
Yeah. Then I think within the segment we have a piece that we haven't even considered yet, which is like the state lotteries and things like that, like which are huge in many countries. So much of this market is not taken up by people who go to physical casinos either. It is people who just play lotteries and things like that. That's another segment too, which, you know, going into the future, you would think that with improving payment methods, it's getting easier to and less friction to create an account and play. You would think that eventually that type of legacy segment as well will move to online.
Yeah, that I would probably sort of tend to agree with on the lottery piece. It's a very different mentality playing the lottery than it is playing kind of your sort of historic casino games or betting on sports. Like a lottery is something you like. The mentality, at least for the most part, the mentality with lottery is that you never expect to win. Lottery is always a dream. I mean, talking about it from, you know, a personal point of view, sat here in the UK playing the Euro Millions. Never are you buying a Euro Millions ticket thinking I've got a chance of winning this. Sort of, it's almost for that dream excitement of the what if, will it?
Exactly.
You know, for a couple of quid a week to sit and think, well, what do I do if I win? I'll buy the mansions, you know, all these things, because it's just so unrealistic that would ever happen. So the mentality for that is completely different to, you know, what I think we're talking about, or, you know, the more kind of standard casino or sportsbook, where obviously a lot of players are playing in the casino or betting on sports with, you know, belief that there's some handle over the outcome, and influence over that outcome. So I think, the mentalities are slightly different of the player type with those two.
Yeah, that's true. And continue.
No, it's like, you know, again, a lottery ticket might be something that you go into a shop to buy, I don't know, some milk or groceries, and they tend to sell them up at the stall, and you think, oh, okay, I'll just, you know, grab one of those. Or as I see when I'm in the office in Spain, there's always the people kind of out on the street selling a lottery ticket because it's the rollover that day or the Euro. Like, that's something that I doubt there will be too much change to.
Yeah.
And honestly, because again, it's a sort of, some weeks you remember, some you don't. It's not, I don't think there's, you know, much, or perhaps, you know, slightly, but much addiction on the kind of Euro Millions playing.
Exactly. Like you're saying, I mean, it's difficult, right? You won't buy, you're not going to invest thousands in that lottery. It's a different habit, right? Because you are buying into this dream of the possibility is there. You know, people like to have that feeling that, you know, their life can change, you know, even if it's very unlikely, and obviously the odds are massively stacked against them. But just the feeling of knowing that, like, you know, it could happen. Like, you only need to invest a couple of euro. It's not going to change anything. Yeah.
No, and it, you know, often, or more often than not, the lotteries are working towards good causes as well in their chosen countries. So, you know, a lot of the lottery funds goes towards a variety of charities. So, you know, there's that flip side that I think, you really don't mind it.
Yeah, that's
yeah, exactly.
So what about so you guys, James? Obviously, you are you are communicating a lot with the land-based casinos and things like that in general now to make them sign up and also have like a digital twin or like or have an online offering in conjunction with their land-based offering. Like when you discuss with these land-based casinos, like what kind of like culture difference do you see between kind of online and land-based when you discuss with your potential clients and clients?
I think again, with our sweet spot at the minute is working with a lot of the land base. We've got a couple of partners live that both have properties. We've recently partnered or been selected by a couple of others in different markets, again with current land-based operations, and they're wanting or will be using us to deliver their digital offering. They are inevitably different worlds. The digital delivery has been very different to the historic kind of land-based one. I think where we try and add value across the piece is supporting, the education and making sure that we can also deliver something that's best kind of reflective of what they have sort of in the retail. We believe and have seen the best successes from those that have a really solid omni-channel delivery. Specifically to gig, what we mean by that is basically giving a solution that gives players, a seamless kind of journey between the two worlds and a seamless, point of interaction between the player and the casino itself. So we offer, as an example, things like dual registration. So signing up in one environment allows you to register for the other without having to do them separately. Shared loyalty, as well as things like a shared wallet. So you're able to sort of transfer funds between the two worlds as well, build up loyalty points between the two worlds, and it's not lost when you leave one and go into the other. So it's trying to really gel the two, it's the two different worlds of the same operator. And through that, you'll see an upside on both. I don't think one cannibalizes the other. You can have offerings in one to drive the other. You could have a player that's building up some loyalty points in the online, playing at home, and again, depending your property and what it offers, but they could win a meal at your property or a hotel for a few nights if it's one of the larger ones out in Vegas, and therefore actually driving virtual players that might have otherwise not come to the property. And obviously that could be done in the return as well. You have players that are needing to leave the machine that they're on or unable to get to the casino, as we've seen with something like COVID. So having something that can best reflect that in the online space will keep them as well.
So what about like so dealing with these like very traditional organizations as a casino is, you don't see that much innovation in how a casino has driven in revenue traditionally. Like you're saying, it's more about the experience when you're in the casino, and all of a sudden they are faced with this scary online betting that they have that they maybe not know so much about. But on our end, these type of solutions makes a lot of sense. Go online, you play, you can win free nights at the hotel. It all makes perfect sense. But do you get a lot of resistance as well when you speak to these casinos? Do you get the feeling that they aren't really that sold from the first meeting, let's say?
I think probably people used to. I don't think we really see that so much now. Also, a lot of the people running the offline casinos, very intelligent people, very experienced, have a broad understanding now of the kind of whole gaming picture, the whole gaming piece, and do come to us with a reasonable degree of knowledge. I think perhaps that's shifted over the years, but we're finding that a lot of the people we're speaking to speak very coherently about online.
Mm.
Perhaps some of the owners behind the scenes have a more kind of archaic view, but at least again from what from the interactions that we're having, the people in charge of investigating the online piece on behalf of the casinos or the work directly with the casinos, actually, they're quite experienced, which makes our jobs obviously a lot easier because you're not kind of teaching something completely new or from scratch.
Yeah, fair enough.
And we find as well that a lot are coming with some really good ideas.
Yeah,
How they want to or see their worlds interact. And again, I think why we're seeing a lot come to gig is that we're one of the sort of few businesses that has been successful in delivering omni-channel and that kind of seamless interaction between the offline and online worlds for our partners, which is key for them.
Yeah.
That you don't want what would be the point almost in having land-based kind of equity that you can't utilize for the online. If they don't speak, you might as well just launch a random online casino.
That's true. I think a really big success story in all of this was the WSOP that moved online. I don't know if you saw this, James, but the World Championships in poker, obviously a super legacy traditional event since like the 70s or whatever, the old Bronson days. And they were obviously forced to move online this year. GG Poker organized it, and they managed to secure like a $20 million prize pool for the main event, which is, I mean, incredible for an online poker event these days, especially. So that just tells the story again that like it is possible to move kind of like this like legacy or like traditional players who played the WSOP in person and to move that brand online. So it just goes to show the potential in kind of moving these brands online.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've seen it globally across many industries. That I think without interacting nowadays with digital in any shape or form is going to be a huge discredit to your business. A lot of industry was already there. You look at the fashion industry. Without an online presence in that, you're as good as dust, right? And I think as we touched on at the start, gaming was slowly heading in that direction, sort of for the need to support what you have in the retail with something online. And COVID, again, as it has with many businesses, not just kind of in our gaming sector, but outside of that, has forced everyone to think, how do you deliver your digital piece? As I said, it doesn't mean that the physical thing is dead by any means. We've seen it in restaurants as a great example. Here in the UK, restaurants were shut for however long the main kind of body of lockdown was, 4 months or something like that. And they solely are obviously reliant on you going into the physical property, ordering, eating, drinking there. So how have they managed? The ones that sort of we've seen, and this is just for the UK, but I'm sure reflective of a lot of countries, is that they've done home deliveries. So they have set menus that either they deliver heated or you can make up. If on their menu your favorite meal was a certain kind of burger, chips, salad, etc., they then package it and be selling it. So again, it's probably not mitigating, definitely not mitigating the entirety of the revenues that they're missing out on from not being open, but it's something that has at least, I guess, enabled them to stay afloat. It has supported it, and in some cases will have probably created, and this is where I think there's crossover with the gaming industry, created new users, like having had people for the first time interact with them online, perhaps bought some of their products and gone, I've really enjoyed that. When the next opportunity is to visit that property, in this case a restaurant, I will do so because, well, if I enjoyed what I had at home, then I'm definitely going to enjoy the real thing, and have the added kind of atmosphere and environment. And so I think that's probably reflective slightly on the casino side.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, to put it short, I think the beauty of this is like, it's not about moving players here or moving them there. It's more about creating a growth loop. So you have players that enter your casino, and they are presented with advertisement on how they can also play when they come home. So that kind of closes the loop from that end. But also you have players then on the internet who finds this site online and starts playing online, and they are then presented with bonuses for how they can stay, like you mentioned, with a free night at the casino hotel, for example, which pulls them into the property, and you create a really nice growth loop, basically. That works from both ends. That is just that it's not about COVID or not COVID. Like this growth loop should be there regardless, right?
Exactly. Just bring the two worlds together. As you know, we do things like a dual registration. So once you sign up in the physical, that you get the online automatically done for you. You touched on earlier one of the great sort of content companies that can do live casino. So perhaps you've just known this casino from their website, but you've been playing on a live table, that had cameras set up there, that's got a dealer from the casino itself, that you think, I'm always really lucky with that person. I've really enjoyed the experience of playing on that branded table from that casino. I might pop down one day and sort of see what it's like in the flesh.
Yeah. Exactly.
And again, as you say, kind of closing that loyalty loop.
Yeah, closing the loop. Yeah, but then as a final point on this, and I think to close, start closing things off a little bit today as well, is when all of this comes together now, like you said, we have COVID, which is like an obstacle, and it forces organizations to rethink their business models, and in all kind of brick and mortar industries, retail, clothing stores, like you mentioned, are even before COVID not doing that well. Like malls are closing down, people are spending more and more online. Casinos, the question is the same as we are seeing. The market share is constantly growing on the online side. And then you combine that with like the emerging tech that we see now. So like I sometimes I like to think about kind of the future a little bit too much, but and it excites me. But I don't know, James, if you ever tried like Oculus and these things, like the VR headsets. For me, I bought it the first day it came because I wanted to be a part of the future. I don't want to lag behind. But something I realized super quick is that the Oculus headset was. I mean, in all honesty, it's still very much of a novelty. People buy it, they play it for a couple of weeks, and then they put it to rest for the next year. That's where we are right now. That doesn't mean like it will be like that in the future. But where I'm coming to is, for me, there was one application in the Oculus Rift which is truly engaging, which truly actually is a miracle and a marvel of this technology, and that is the PokerStars VR poker experience. Okay. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've not personally played on.
Check it out on YouTube or whatever, because this really brings the whole experience together. Because you basically sit on a poker table with the VR headset on. You have other 8 people around you, and you hear that you speak like normal. You see them. You can, with the controller, you take the chips, you throw in the chips, and you look at the cards, just like you do with a table, and you meet people. You have conversations with them, just like you would at a poker table. And I tell you, like, it is exactly like sitting at a poker table. So then that just begs the question, and like, will this? This has to be the future, in my opinion. So then the question is like even more.
But then it's like
poker rooms. Yeah,
I think yes and no, because everything you say is of personal experience.
Yeah,
and personal environment. As an example, like for me to do or be in the environment to be able to do that. For example, like I've got 2 young kids at home and a wife, and I think for me to be sat in the living room playing with the Oculus headset, a game of poker, and that, however realistic that interaction or game may be, the reality of me having being able to be free enough to do that and comfortable enough to do it around the family isn't there. So for me to play a game of poker, I would feel, at least, and this is personal, but as much as your experience is personal to you, I would much rather go to a casino and play a hand of poker, or go to a friend's in an organized night, and would never find myself kind of sat at home doing it, however good I know it could be. I think there's that aspect to it. I also think, mentality always shifts. We've seen it a little bit, in social media, especially more and more at the moment, where there started to be a bit of a growing shift of people going, actually, do they know too much about me? Do they have too much kind of on me? Do I want to keep interacting so much with these like digital kind of platforms? And they're seeing, in small numbers at the minute, but everything I guess starts with small numbers, people disconnecting from their Facebook, deleting it from their phone, and there's probably going to be a slight, well, there can be in certain sectors, a slight kind of retraction on digital, and pushback that I don't know, maybe people are going to go, well, maybe this is too much, maybe we need to just take a step back from it all.
Yeah, have you seen the Social Dilemma, the new documentary?
Yeah, that's basically what I'm thinking about. The other night.
Yeah, so the irony with that documentary, I saw it as well, and it's scary, seeing it. And then the irony is that people see it, and the first thing they do is they post on social media about how horrible it is.
Yeah, I think different views. Like my wife, we watched it, and straight away she just deleted Facebook, took it off.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've had a few friends say the same. And she is, and the friends have been kind of very early movers in digital, very much embracing the various, in this sense, social media platforms. Kind of watched that, and I think had a slight realization of kind of just how exposed she was. We all are. I think, we probably, having worked in digital for a while, or the digital side of gaming, have a slightly better understanding of computers' AI capabilities, and therefore maybe it's slightly less shocking what they know. But I think, as I said, having watched that, did make me think a little bit about sort of the amount I've spent on social media, and sometimes like the reason for going on it. Like, why are you opening up? What are you hoping to see? Even without a notification, let's just go in. Let's just see if there's an update from someone I've not spoken to in years. For what purpose? And actually, you then start missing, the real interaction with someone. Having a friend over for a beer or glass of wine.
Yeah, and I love the comparison that they did in that documentary. They said every time you take your phone and you look at it as you want to see your latest notification, it's exactly the same thing as when you spin a wheel on the like when you pull the lever on a slot machine, because you might see some notifications and you might not. And that is the excitement of the unknown. You will get a little bit of a dopamine kick when you pick up that phone, and it makes me think that social media should be regulated the same way, or should be seen the same way as gambling. You should regulate it the same way. I mean, we have our regulators, so looking at social media.
I mean, that's something we didn't actually touch on in the main body of the effects on land-based at the moment. I think what, coupled with COVID, what's certainly not helping the situation, is the sort of, well, it depends what market you're in, but UK, for example, is the continued drive of new restriction is making it quite hard to operate. Obviously, near impossible with the impact of COVID, but prior to COVID, land-based operators, again, this is specifically in the UK, we're finding it hard having new rules constantly imposed. So government, and globally government, plays a big part and will play a big part in, I think, the future of land-based. it's how easy it is for them to operate in some kind of norm. That will also, play a part, because it will get to a point an operator could just go, it is so hard to get players to have players that are allowed to spend more than a certain amount without going through to, I just don't. I think there's a lot of factors that will come into play and have been coming into play even prior to COVID.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about, James, and I think we can go on for hours and hours with this topic. But we're gonna have to leave it at that for today. Thank you so much, James, for coming on today. Is there any last thing you'd like to close off today with?
I think it's not all doom and gloom. The world will end up allowing this to be a sort of a workable norm, something that's just there, and we will return to some normality. But anyone that's not kind of planning for a slightly more digital age off the back of it will potentially be left behind. But in terms of the headline topic of this, no, I definitely don't think it is the death as a big picture of land-based casino. But again, as with the event world, and the piece that sort of you're driving, that there does need to be a slight shift in mentality and an openness to perhaps look at attributing a digital piece to the offering. And I think that will then give longer term sustainability and allow you to be open then to any kind of changes, whether the restrictions come in a digital or an offline piece. You would be in a position to balance it with the other. And as I said, it's key that as and when you do go online or you do move to digital, to ensure the whole piece links up seamlessly for the player.
Beautiful.
That's what we support with.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end today's discussion. And like you're saying, this is not doom and gloom. Do it the right way, and it can benefit both channels, basically.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you so much, James, today. And thanks also to the sponsors, Pragmatic Solutions. And thanks for everyone for tuning in today. Hopefully you found us in the positive side of social media, which is where we belong, I think. And I wish you a really good day, James. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me.